So this session is about powerful questions and how to grow the client's awareness. We use that word awareness a lot, and you might be thinking, but what really is awareness and why does it matter? When I think about awareness, I actually think about sort of three parts. In the middle you have what we're consciously aware of. So that's what we can talk about with ease. We've access to that information, we've understanding about it. And then beyond that lies what we're unconsciously aware of. There's stuff that's only just beyond our conscious awareness that we could sort of probably walk into because it's sort of almost on the boundary. And then there's what's kind of deeper into our unconscious awareness, stuff that we feel less comfortable with and unconsciously we might avoid internally. And when we think on our own, when we reflect on our own, we're often quite clever and careful to keep our thinking within our kind of comfort zone of awareness, what we like to think about, what maybe we like to think about ourselves, which relates to what I think of as our self-concept, how I like thinking about myself. Because I have different ways that I like to think about myself, for example, of being a good parent, information and data that confirms that is comfort zone stuff to me, whereas something that disconfirms that is less comfortable, and I'll be a little bit more avoidant of that. So that's where it comes into that idea of confirmation bias, that we bias towards information that confirms what we want to believe, what we like to think. And then beyond our unconscious awareness is what's outside of our awareness. And that we really have no idea about at any level. And sometimes just realising the limits of awareness is enough. So really so far what we've done is we've looked at a bit of the theory under the hood. What is awareness and why does it matter? Now we're going to think a bit about how do we ask questions that evoke that awareness. And I want to present 5 ideas for how you use questions to evoke awareness in your coaching sessions. And the first is to arrive curious, because powerful questions come from powerful presence. And curiosity helps you to be present with the client and to be interested in their agenda. And that's actually how you're going to ask the best questions, because the best questions are not like a sort of set list of perfect questions that always have the right result. You need to be in the real-time dance with the client, in the real-time interplay, so that you're able to ask the right question at the right moment that is going to expand their awareness. The second is that you're going to use those questions to focus the client's attention. And this is something that is hard for especially new coaches to get into the habit of, because in our everyday questioning, we're more used to asking questions for our own purposes, for our own sort of information. And a bit like we talked about last time, underlying that can be the idea that we're going to try and diagnose and prescribe. Here we're not going to diagnose and prescribe. We're trying to get richer data, better information, better awareness for the client so that they can create their own solution. The third suggestion is that we're going to try and move beyond fluency and into thinking. So if I ask a question and the client is able to talk about it very, very fluently, for me that is often a sign that they're operating from a pre-prepared script, that this might be something that they've talked about lots before. That's not where I want to be for 2 reasons. The first is, if they've talked about it a lot before, then we're in conscious awareness. If I'm in the conscious awareness, then I'm in the known. There's no new learning there. And the second thing is that if they're in their old script, then they're in kind of memory. They're in old thinking. And new insights come from being able to think about things in new ways. And that's partly what we're wanting to do in the coaching conversation, is help partner with them to explore new perspectives and new patterns of thinking, new ways of thinking. Because if the old ways were good enough, they wouldn't be needing to have the conversation. The fourth suggestion is that you learn to value silence. I've kind of learned to be really comfortable with it and to see it as a fertile place that new insights come from. If the client is silent, it's likely that they're doing hard work. And even if they're not doing good work, even if what that silence is kind of articulating is confusion, a lack of knowing where to go from here, that can also be very, very creative. It might make the space for them to take the lead and suggest the next step that needs to be taken in the conversation. And it's a really helpful way of moving away from the preconception that some clients come in with, that you, Mr. Coach or Mrs. Coach, are going to do lots of the work, give me lots of answers, create solutions for me. But actually, this is a space that we're creating for them to do the work and to do really high quality work and come up with better outcomes than they would if they were thinking on their own. The last suggestion is about disrupting, not interrupting. So I use those words quite carefully because to interrupt can mean to stop an activity. And we're not wanting to stop the activity of thinking, but we are wanting to disrupt thinking, or like referring earlier to that idea of what's our kind of comfort zone of thinking, which might contain some limiting beliefs and might contain some ideas that need updating. So what might that look like in practice? If, for example, we've got somebody who is quite an introverted thinker, what might it look like to disrupt that thinking? Do you have any feelings about that? Might be a catalytic question that helps them to think about it in a new way. Or if you're speaking with a client who maybe has got quite an extroverted thinking type personality, and so often it's fast-paced and it's quite results-oriented, then what does it look like for them to try slowing down and reflecting a bit more? What might there be wanting to come in? How can you change gear, disrupt the kind of habituated way that they think to help them grow their awareness and let some new thinking in? If you're speaking with a client who is quite cautious and likes to kind of think through their answers quite carefully before answering, or not to jump in, then the coaching conversation could be a space where they can very safely experiment with speaking the unformed thought, which is often a really rich way, again, of expanding and evoking their awareness, because they find themselves saying something that they didn't even knew they knew, or didn't even think that they thought. If they're very articulate and they're very strong in working with words, and it's quite easy for them to be kind of in control of the narrative through language, what about getting them to have a go at drawing something, or getting up and moving into a shape or into a space? Because again, it disrupts their habituated ways of thinking, which might release or unleash some new awareness. So those are a few thoughts from me today about how we're going to evoke awareness for our clients